Tesla Q3 delivery and production estimates. Today is October 1st, and Tesla should be, potentially by Friday or over the weekend, releasing the delivery numbers for Q3 2020. So I wanted to put this out here and see how accurate we are in our estimates. We went through and broke down and looked at this in a couple different ways to see what we think versus what Wall Street thinks is going to be the delivery numbers for Tesla. That includes in the United States and Shanghai factory to understand what is going on with the company and how quickly they are growing. So, with that being said, if this is your first time here, what's good? My name is Sam, and for those of you who are returning, it's good to freaking see you. Okay, why does it really matter if we are accurate or more accurate than what Wall Street thinks? When you're trading, so I don't trade stocks, but I do trade options. And if you can come in and understand where the consensus of the market thinks things are going to be, and understand how the market thinks about what is going to happen, and then you have a more accurate prediction, then you get to trade on that information and you can make money on that information. So I want to show you, this is from Morningstar and the data is pulled from Factset. The analysis of average expected Tesla to report of 140,000 vehicles. So this is as of Wednesday, today, October 1st. This is when this was released. So 140,000 vehicles. My estimate is quite a bit higher than that. So we're going to dive into how we actually went in and did this. So let's take a look here at what we did to pull this up. So I pulled in some data sources to show you what we're looking at, and we have three different estimates that we're using, and then we're going to take the average of those. So first of all, let's take a look at what's going on over in China. So we're going to take a highlight. This section right here is highlighted, and we get to see there's about 13 weeks in a quarter. So we'll assume that 1 week they were potentially down. And then there's two different numbers we're taking a look at here in terms of production. How many could they actually produce? So this is from InsideEV.com, and this was on August 31st, 2020. They had reported with video footage from Tesla Greater China down here that at the end of 2019, they were actually on one 10-hour shift, they were producing 2,000 cars a week. And the production capacity had reached 3,000 per week. But then they also go on to say that from mid 2020, Tesla is probably able to produce 4,000 units. So then if we come over here to Teslamanian.com, and they actually had said, this is back in March, so this is shortly after they opened up from the pandemic thing that happened, right? So after they opened back up, they actually added a second shift. So that would kind of verify that they're probably at least at 4,000 units a week. And then we come over here, and this estimate is down here. This is based on worldwide registration data. So this is a little bit cloudy information and can be super lagged, but I wanted to put it in there to at least have some type of more conservative bias to these numbers, because when you're just going off of all of this data, by the way, this is not any fucking recommendation that you trade or invest any of your money, but this is based upon a tracker of total global registrations for Tesla Model 3. So we get to see over here that according to this website here, the registrations worldwide in the month of August were 31,000 and change for the Model 3. So they did not include Model S or X or Model Y. And Tesla doesn't break down Model Y. So, but in this article, if you're looking at registration data, you get to actually see if it's Model Y or Model 3. So if we assume that Model Y, which according to Elon is predicted to be more popular than the Model 3, we're just going to assume that it's 50%, right? Because they're still ramping in Shanghai. They're still ramping up the production line for Model Y in Nevada. So when you take a look at this and we're going to say it's 50%, that means in the month of August, just based on these numbers, if Model Y was about 50% of that, then the total that was produced in that month, and then this 11.69% is actually from Tesla. So this is from the investor relations page at Tesla.com. And you get to see that they clump together S and X and 3 and Y together. This is Q2 2020. We get to see that if we're looking at delivery numbers right here, the delivery numbers, the S and X and the Model 3 and Y represent, or the S and X represent about 12% of total deliveries. So if you take that as a estimate of 12% of what was the Model 3 right there, that would be 3,600. So that's already conservative because that didn't include the Model Y, where these numbers do include the Model Y, right? So it's already probably a little bit low there. And when we add these three up, it comes out to be 50,000 for the month of August in terms of total registrations. That's our estimate. And if you 50,579. Now, in a quarter, right, we got 3, so that would be 51,000. So that's the first estimate that we're taking a look at. Now, when we go back to what is happening over in China, okay, this is from July 30th. So in July, they had reported, where was it? From people familiar with the matter, Tesla Giga Shanghai is aiming to increase Model 3 weekly production rate from 4,000 units to 5,000 units. Yes, it's the information from Tesla's supply chain. Currently Tesla, and then they talk about going from 200,000 vehicles to 250,000 vehicles. And this was when it was July 30th. So if we go back to Inside EV, right, this was published after this article here. But we see similar numbers in there. So when we take a look at this, and Inside EV is not as up to date with all the leaks that are coming out from my personal experience and research. So when we take a look at this, I would say the numbers are north of 4,000. And that's what we did right here. We took a look at the weekly production of 4,000 vehicles for the quarter. There's 13 weeks in the quarter. That would give us 52,000 out of China. And we know that they've already been producing not just Model 3, but they've also been producing Model Y. There's been plenty of pictures that have come out on Twitter and across the internet showing that that factory in China is actually producing Model Y. So on the lower side, if there was a week of downtime, say 3 days here and 3 days here throughout a quarter to doing updating of the assembly line and whatnot, then that would be 48,000. But if they got just a little bit higher than 4,000, and I'm not saying 5,000, but say if they got to 4,500 for a run rate, and they did that for 12 weeks, and say that 1 week was actually to update the assembly line to get to 4,500 units, then that would be 54,000 units out of Shanghai. So if we take the average of those, that's 51,000. Now, what did they do in the United States? Well, if you look at and I didn't pull it up here, but if you look at the total number for what was produced in 2019, or delivered in 2019, it was 367,500. And in their investors relations letter, they mentioned that there was 1,000, just less than 1,000 saleable vehicles that were produced in Shanghai before the end of December 2019. So if we have 367,500 and we just take off 500, that leaves us right here, the annual number that was produced in the United States. And then if we look at 2018 versus 2019, we see that there's a 50% increase in the amount of production out of that factory. So we're not going to say that there's a 50% increase in production. We're just going to say there's a 10% increase in production. Just a 10%, because we had the pandemic, right, at the beginning of the year, where they were shut down for, in their letter, they say a good portion of the quarter, or verbiage to that degree or not. So we're just going to have a 10% increase in production in 9 months, right? So we take 10% on the annual, and then that gives us 400,000 out of that factory. Basically 36,000 more vehicles coming out of that factory, divided by 4, and that would give us this number right here. Basically 101,000 vehicles that would come out of that factory. But if we take a look over here at electric, and this was on July 16th, a look inside of the Gigafactory Nevada, and we come down here, and then if they're averaging, basically they go on to say how many batteries are being produced, and that's 80 gigawatt hours per year, and 221 megawatt of battery cells per day. Well, if you do the math on that and you say the average vehicle has about 85 kilowatt hours, and I believe for the Model 3 and the Model Y, it's actually less than that, but the Model X and the Model S, it could be higher than that. So we don't know what the average is per vehicle. I'd rather be conservative and go a little bit higher. Then that would be approximately 1,300 right here. And we take 50% of that number, and we're going to allocate that to energy storage. We're not going to allow that to be in terms of battery, because that's from what Elon puts out. It seems to be that around 50% goes to battery storage or energy business, right? And the other half goes to vehicle production. So that would give us, if we're producing a little over around 1,300 vehicles per day, then that for the quarter of 90 days, then that would be 117,000 out of Nevada. So when we take a look at these two different estimates, right, we increased last year by just 10%, or we take a look at the data coming out, and this came from electric, we can see that according to the data, this was on July 16th, there's about 117,000. And then based upon last year, it comes out to be 101,000. So let's take the average of those two, which is 108, and we took the average for China. So these two together is almost 160,000. But we're going to combine all three of these numbers to come up with a total. Our Q3 estimate is 156,000 vehicles. That is substantially more than they ever have delivered or produced in any individual quarter. But we have ramping lines in Nevada, we have ramping lines in Shanghai, and then if you split that up and you say that that's how many, that's based upon this data. So I took about 98% of that just to be conservative. I generally adjust the numbers at the end here. So we have about 53,000. So these are my personal estimates for the production, about 53,000. And then we'll say that some are in transit. So we're going to say between the numbers that are going to come out are probably going to be between 146,000 and 153,000, depending on how many cars are in transit. To say Europe or other countries, and if they're stuck at the customs or whatever the case is. And I'd love to hear what your thoughts are down below, but let's just quickly run through again what we did here, and then in a couple days hopefully we'll have a follow-up video to see how accurate or inaccurate we actually were. We took a look at the registration data, and we made an assumption around the SNX that percentage of total is going to hold, but that we just based it on Model 3, making it more conservative because we left Model Y numbers out of it when we did this estimate, and that comes out at 151,000. So these numbers right here, I think, are just, they're even on the low end, and this is still 11,000 higher than what Factset has. And then when you look over here at the data coming out of China, I mean, over 50,000 out of there. We've also had plenty of reports coming out where Shanghai is probably going to start exporting vehicles to the neighboring countries right around there. So that makes sense to support what's actually going on here, that they're going to be shipping vehicles out. They're also producing the Model 3 and Y out of China now, and adding a third shift, which this just came out a couple days ago, but they're adding a third shift to Shanghai factory. So that's going to be interesting for Q4 as those numbers come out. Make sure you press that subscribe button and the bell notification so you can get notified. Then we took a look at the battery production here and came up with an estimate for the number of cars that were being produced per day out of Giga Nevada. It's about 1,300. Which gives us for the quarter about 117,000 vehicles. Or if we base it upon last year's numbers with 10% increase because of the pandemic, we have about 101,000 vehicles here. So taking the average of that, we got 108. What are your estimates? I'm curious to know where you guys stand on this. We'll see if we fall within this range here of 153,000 to 146 and a half, roughly, thousand. Appreciate you guys, and I will talk to you soon. Peace.